I, Dr. Frederick Palance Barrymore, am about to embark upon a most controversial and somewhat dangerous experiment involving an exchange of the condition of our basic natures. Even as a child, I was intrigued and obsessed with the transformation of one state of being into another. After an endless series of trial and error, I finally found the definitive answer to my laborious endeavors, the actual mental and physical metamorphosis of the human being and his soul. Unfortunately, a grand poo-poo happened, and now I cannot transfer myself back to Dr. Barrymore. And I find I am trapped inside this creature-like being known as Igorro. Igorro.
Hello, it's me, Igorro. I hope you enjoy the Horrah of Aurora. It's some old hits and I put them all together so you can watch the whole thing. Oh, Ghoul. Hi-ho, folks. It's me, Cool Dude Ghoul, and I'm here to open up a new series of shorts, and this one's called the Horrah of Aurora. Rah, sis boom bah, humbug who gives a cloodle toot. So these Aurora kits, I've looked at a couple, or I believe Igorro did in the last episode, the Golden Hunchback, which was kind of wild and crazy, and I don't know what was going on in his kadanga when he took that spray can and went kawanga on that Hunchback. And the other one was the, the Mummy's Chariot. He found more pieces of that. But anyway, other than those two, those are both Aurora. This is again more Aurora. So let's get to it. Let's see what we got here. Ooh, chocolate dogs. Take a look at this one. This is the old Forgotten Prisoner. Take a look, see at this baby. Yeah, this one was one of the older Aurora kits. Kind of came out a little after all the other ones. This one is Aurora Plastic Corp. Let me take a peek here. 1966. So this is an original Forgotten Prisoner. It's a beauty. So the Forgotten Prisoner of Castlemere, I remember getting this as a little chingo. It was Valentine's Day, and my mother, she was, she said, well, I got one gift on Valentine's Day, and I remember seeing this at Crescent's, which was a department store down in old Aberdonian land where I'm from, and I said, oh, Mom, I want to get the Forgotten Prisoner. She said, oh, okay, well, we'll see, I don't know. And then I was all excited, and I went around and looked at other stuff in the department store, and I came back, and the Aurora Forgotten Prisoner model kit was gone. Somebody had bought it. And I was like, oh, boo-hoo. I'm like, never mind, Mom, it's gone. She said, oh, I'm sorry. But guess what? Come Valentine's Day, Galuchu! Right after my own heart. I got it. And this is the original same one, I believe. Now, I repainted it a little later, and it's funny because if you notice the model kit, the Aurora cover by James Bond is so beautiful. He was so good at using light. He and Basil Gogos, who did all the famous Monsters covers, really knew how to take light and throw them on in the 60s. Throw that great light on it. I think this had a really cool purple light on it. So in order for me to get that look at that time, I just gave him purple pants and kind of gave him some purple highlights. So that's what it looks like there. I don't know if you could see it right there. But that's what I did. So yeah, that is the Aurora Forgotten Prisoner of Castlemere. Now the other thing that's unique about this particular Aurora kit is that it's got no movie references. This isn't from a film. All the other model kits that Aurora did that were monster models were all based on films, right? Frankenstein, Dracula, Wolfman, Mummy, all based on films. This one was not. It was a later issue. It's a little smaller than the usual kits. Not a real movie, but a heck of a kit. So cool. Kind of reminds me of like Pirates of the Caribbean kind of thing. But anyway, 1966, original kit. And there she is, forgotten prisoner of Castle Mare. Whatcha cocha? Yaga daga boo. Here we go. Hunchback of Notre Dame. It's delicate. It looks like the rope broke. I'll have to refix that. I think this rope came all the way down, I believe. As a matter of fact. Yeah, I got the other gold one over there I'm looking at. So I'd like to refurbish and fix that. But I like the paint work I did. Again, I'd like to clean them up and do a little more highlight with the paint. But it's got nice detail on the back. Even got the scars where he was whipped. You know, when he's screaming for water, more water. But again, not RKO's Charles Lawton, not Anthony Quinn, which I believe was, and I probably get called on this, but I believe it was Columbia or 20th Century Fox that did Anthony Quinn's version in the 60s. And it's not anything like Lon Chaney, which was 23, I believe. They had the rights to the Universal, so I don't know why they had this confusion. They, as I said before with the Ghoul one, you know, they did do Anthony Quinn on the cover. Then they said, no, you can't do that because it's not Universal. You have no rights and blah, blah, blah. So eventually they changed the look and kind of, you know, he always looked like this in the model, but the face changed a lot on the box. And I don't know who made the actual mold, but somebody just went, well, just kind of go a little bit of, you know, Anthony Quinn, a little bit of Lon Chaney, and no Charles Lawton, who's kind of one of my favorite Hunchbacks, actually. It's one of my favorite versions of the 1939 RKO Hunchback of Notre Dame. Hammer never did it. They never really did the Hunchback again. He kind of became Igorro, or, you know, Fritz, or the assistant. The Hunchback was kind of morphed off into assisting Frankenstein, or in Italian films, sometimes he dug up Dracula or whatever. I mean, he came out of nowhere. He was everywhere. Sometimes there was even a woman Hunchback. There's J.K. Nash, House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula's got the female Hunchback. They're like, well, put him in there somewhere. This is what they ended up doing. So, again, I think it's pretty nice work. Yeah, the working with the shadows around the hair and stuff is tricky because you don't want to make it too, you know, like when Lon Chaney played the Hunchback, he put on a 70-pound latex piece that was with the hump included and stuff. It was a ton of weight. The guy, like I said before, is kind of a sadist. I mean, but he made his own stuff, so the fur on it is really prominent. It doesn't kind of blend in. So I've kind of blended in, you know, some of it so it's not quite so stark, you know. Kind of almost looks like a bad, crazy Fred Flintstone toupee on his chest. It's just kind of like hair, like nothing, no hair. Big, you know, fur coat kind of glued right on him. But again, he was a genius. The one that sticks in my mind the most is the 1939 Hunchback with Charles Lawton. And also keep in mind, you know, depending on your era when you were born, sometimes those other films just weren't available. Like, I don't ever remember seeing Chaney's Hunchback. You couldn't, you know, now you can watch it anywhere. But back in the 60s and 70s, you couldn't, you know. So I never saw Chaney's Hunchback, only in stills, and I never saw Anthony Quinn's Hunchback either. I believe Gina Lollobrigida played the gypsy girl, Esmeralda. And then the one that I did see was the RKO version. They did play that on TV, so that's the one that I remembered. I was really careful with this one. This is a beauty. This is the Bride of Frankenstein. Now this one, this kit is a reissue, I believe. And it's like I repainted it in 1998. Ooh. There goes something. But I painted it in 98, so I probably bought it in like 96 or something. So this is a reissue. I had the original one, but who knows where it went. Just like that thing that fell down there somewhere. Hello? Remind me to get that. I don't know how you're going to remind me, but do. Anyway, but I love this one. This one, too, is beautiful. Now, again, there was something that happened with Aurora. They came out later with The Witch, right? And Bride of Frankenstein. And if you notice, these guys, they're more, they have more detail in the background. Like all this lab equipment stuff. The earlier Aurora models, like Frankenstein, Dracula, the focus was on Frankenstein's monster, Dracula, a little bit of background stuff, but these, they made the, this figure, she's smaller in scale than the other Auroras. Like the Hunchback has a bigger scale, right? So they focus more on the lab and stuff, and I don't mind it. I think this is beautiful. I'd like to kind of touch this one up a little bit. Obviously, it needs to be re-glued. I need to find that. I think it was one of those body parts that were laying underneath here. They added some extra gore elements because there was no legs and arms hanging out on the ground in 1935 Frankenstein. Just would be too much, But this one is beautiful, and I do like the paintwork that I did on it. I try to zoom in, get a couple of close-ups of this and pop them in for you. But this is a pretty cool model. I like the detail. I really do. And again, she needs to be re-glued. There's some pieces here I need to take all the dust out of her, but there's certain elements of it I think will stay. I do like the work I did on her facial features. I like the lab stuff. I might do something a little different here, but this model is really cool. There's some details that need work. I just noticed one of the back posts. Oh yeah, it's in there. So yeah, she's repairable. And again, the Bride of Frankenstein, there was some remix of the Bride. They did the Bride, I think, with Sting played Dr. Frankenstein, Jennifer Beal played the Bride, but come on, this is the one we remember. This is the one that really is the quintessential Bride of Frankenstein. I mean, there wasn't a lot of other brides. There's some Frankenstein remakes. I remember Dan Curtis did a television version with Bo Svensson as the monster, Robert Foxworth as Dr. Frankenstein, and they had a bride. But I think the bride came to life, and then they killed her right on the table. She was alive for like 3 seconds. They turned her on, brought her to life, and then the doctor's like, oh, we can't do this. And then Gene turned it on and killed her. So she was, if you're the actors that played her, like, yeah, I played the Bride of Frankenstein on Dan Curtis's Frankenstein. I screamed and I died, and that was it. There's also one, Jane Seymour, I believe, played it in Frankenstein the True Story, which I gotta say is not one of my favorite Frankenstein movies, because first of all, it was not the true story. As everybody knows, if you've ever read the novel, which is pretty long-winded, I gotta say. It's no romantic kind of, Gothic era. Written in 1818 by Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley. She was only 18 years old. She wrote it. But anyway, she describes the creature as having almost a translucent, like yellow skin that you could almost see through. He had pearly white teeth and black luxurious hair. But she said it just made him look all the more hideous. So the only thing they really took with that was the black luxurious hair. Was even in Carlos Frankenstein monster, you got that. And Christopher Lee's Curse of Frankenstein, you got that hair, but maybe Christopher Lee's creature is kind of close to how she described it, but then again, not really. No one's really done that creature. But I digress. Here we have her, the Bride of Frankenstein. So, that sums up the first 3 of the Aurora horror model kits. So, I'll see you soon. Keep cool and keep monstering. Ciao. it's me, Igorro. Welcome to the Horror of Aurora. This is part 2. A look at more monster models from Aurora. A big business back in the 1960s. So let's take a looky-see and see what else is in my box of Aurora model kits. Ooh, okay. Looky here. It is the witch. Yes, like I said, they're quite dusty. They're from my old home down in Aberdeen, Transylvania, where I'm originally from. Anyway, this is the witch. This is another unique model because, again, it's not based on any movie. It's just an old hag witch. Interesting thing about the witches always look like hags. Hags in rags, right? Way back from the era of Macbeth, Shakespeare's play. They had hags that were witches. Only when The Wizard of Oz came out in 1939 did the witch really have a black hat, a black cape, and a black costume, and a broom, and was green. That was the classic witch, just like Carlos Frankenstein. It changed the look of witches forever. But anyway, I digress. This one is very much like the Bride of Frankenstein. Bride of Frankenstein, The Witch, and The Forgotten Prisoner of Castlemare all came out a little later after all the other Aurora kits. And only The Bride is one that's actually from a film, but these two, The Witch and Forgotten Prisoner, are both not from films. So this one, I would like to repaint, and I will show you what I've done. I've only been able to actually reconstruct the Bride of Frankenstein, fix her up a little bit, and I'll show her at the end what she looks like now compared to how I showed her here when she was all dusty, or how I think Cool Dude Ghoul showed her. This is a great though, lots of details. I love the bats hanging here for her cauldron, a little bit of bat. You never can have enough bat wing in your soup, right? And then he's got some other bottles here and lots of nice details. Again, this one focuses more on the background, not just like the Frankenstein, the first Aurora kit that came out, which was the focus of just the monster, with just a gravestone, some grass. But basically, these are, again, dimensionally smaller kits, more detail in the backgrounds. But that is the witch, and she is a beaut. Not much more to say about her other than I need to clean her up, and I would like to kind of get a little more kind of color in her a little bit in here and stuff, but I'll show you her when I repaint it. It could be a while though, because I'm kind of busy. Got a lot of Igorro stuff to do. You know, I've got shows to host and stuff, but I will get to it eventually. But this is the witch. She's a beaut. It's, oops, almost dropped her. Ah. Oh, ha, ha. Yeah. This is one of my faves. One of my favorites. How appropriate that he's dusty. Oh boy, is he patchy. Yeah, he's got dust. But he is the mummy. And this one, I believe, let me check. Yeah, this is an original. This is a 1960, gosh, I want to say 63 Aurora. The Horror of Aurora. The Mummy. Now, there are some things that happened with my mummy. Since he is so old, I got him when I was just a little teeny tyke, you know. He was pretty, but he lost a couple fingers here. Little fingers on him, but he lost a couple fingers. But he's a mummy, he's not feeling it. The thing I like about this mummy is, in the 60s, this was the one they focused on. Now this one also by James Wama, the guy who painted the cover of it. This is when he had to stick to it looking exactly like the model kit. Because as I said earlier, the Dracula one doesn't look like the kit, the cover is way different. And someone complained about it, of course, and said, hey, you gotta keep the kit cover looking like the kit inside. So this is one that looks exactly like the cover. And if you notice the cover in the Dracula Aurora kit, it's got bats in the background in the castle wall. It's clearly from Abbott Costello meets Frankenstein. But the model looks completely different. But in this one, this mummy, if you look like the kit's background, it doesn't have anything. It's just, I believe, like a reddish background or something. But the kit is exactly right. This one I like. It's I like the paintwork I did on it. I like the eye. The first time I think I painted him, I put a lot of blood all over it. And I get that, and yeah, yeehaw. But let's face it, there wasn't a lot of blood in the night. Blood. There was no blood. But there wasn't much blood either in the 40s, right? So I stuck to a more looking like Karas. And again, this isn't the Karloff mummy. Because Karloff, you never really saw him as the mummy all wrapped up. You just saw his hand and his rags pulling out of the station, right? And then he was Imhotep. But it changed to Karas, and a lot of people don't like the universal mummies as much as the original mummy, but I love them, and I understand why they used for this Lon Chaney Jr. model more for all the marketing in the 60s. You know, famous monsters, he was all over the place on the cover. The buttons, the shirts, the models, everything was Karas, or Karas, tomato. But this mummy is great. I think the only thing I might consider redoing is painting the cobra more of a greenish tone. I'll have to look it up. I'm not really sure what color cobras were. But anyway, I do like this mummy, and I like the face of the mummy. Again, they're very dusty, and even when I blow them off, they still have a lot of dust on them. But I do plan on cleaning them. It's a very tedious process. I have to clean them with a Q-tip dipped in water. If anybody knows a cleaner way or a quicker way to clean them, I've also thinking of using one of those air compressors to clean them off. But anyway, there he is, the mummy. And again, this mummy is the one that took over the monster movie, Universal Monster Market. He was everywhere. I like all the rag work, and you know, I don't mind the mummy being slow. People say, oh, he's so slow, but my aunt told me when she was a little Decker, and she was young when the mummy came out, she said it terrified her. She said when she was sleeping, she could hear the dragging of the mummy coming through the woods. And yeah, wouldn't that be freaky? Because it seems like no matter how slow he is, he always seems to get there right on time. And bullets don't help. You've seen that, right? They blasted him with bullets. Oh, yeah, I like this one too. This one is one of my faves. Oh, he needs some glue work. He's loose. Boy, this is Dr. Jekyll as Mr. Hyde. Now, what I love about this one is, first of all, for some reason they were able to skip through this. This is not a Universal Jekyll and Hyde. I don't think Universal even did a Jekyll and Hyde. And this one was done by Paramount. This is the Frederick March version. For some reason, this one didn't have the same problems that the Hunchback had. Remember we talked about how the Hunchback cover, it changed it several times, it ended up being the bell ringer. They never seemed to have this problem with Jekyll and Hyde, even though clearly this is the Frederick March version. But I love this Jekyll. It is so well done. Now a lot of people add their own little chemicals and things to the bottles. You know, on the table they add their own extra bottles and stuff. I stuck with what they gave me. And I really like this one. He's loose, so I have to re-glue him. And again, he's really dusty. But this is an interesting one because this is a version that when I was a child, a young Igorro, I wanted to watch Jekyll and Hyde on TV. It was never available. I only saw him through Famous Monsters of Film and this kit. I never saw it because back in the 60s and even the 70s, I believe, and probably maybe, I don't know when, maybe the late 70s or even 80s, someone knows, MGM had all the television rights. So the only version they ever played was the Spencer Tracy version because Paramount wasn't able to show theirs because MGM had some kind of rights over it. I don't know what exactly the legality of it all was, but I was frustrated because I've never been a big fan of Spencer Tracy. Not that I don't think Spencer Tracy's a good actor, I do, but I just thought this one looked so much cooler, so much more iconic. You know, this is the Hyde we think of, right? This kind of Neanderthal, really cool looking Hyde. And in the movie, you'll notice his eyes get more and more, they start to pull, just like Lon Chaney Sr. did. They pull his eyes down, so he starts out, he always looks not too handsome, he always looks like a Neanderthal. But if you notice the eye work, he gets worse and worse looking as he transforms. The more he transforms, each transformation, the worse he looks. Toward the end, he looks really hideous. Not that he was, you know, a handsome man to begin with. But I do like this version of Jekyll and Hyde because I like how they got him as the doctor with the lab kit and stuff, but yet they show you him turning into Hyde. But again, these are really awesome kits. And this is one of my absolute favorites. I really do love this version of the Aurora Jekyll and Hyde. This is the version that I'm glad they did, and kudos for them for doing this. I wanted to show you what I did with the bride. Here she is now. She's been dusted off, and the parts that were loose have now been re-glued, so that she can live her life fully for about 6 seconds before the monster blows up the lab, that is. So that is our wrap up for today. I'm keeping it short, so take care and I'll see you soon. Be creepy and monster on. I gotcha. Hello, people. It's me, Igorro. So glad you could make it for another Horror of Aurora. I'm not gonna waste any time. We're just gonna cut right to it. So let's take a look and see what the first Aurora kit is. Take a guess, right? It is the wolf man. Acha! It's got a goblin right there. Again, you know, I will clean him. I will. I just am busy, okay? It takes a while to get going on these. And he is dusty. It's Lon Chaney Jr. as the Wolfman. Now again, the kit doesn't exactly look like the movie. Not exactly. There are elements though. It's still super cool. And it's a lot different even than the cover. Now here's an interesting thing about the cover of the Wolfman. Curse of the Werewolf, a Hammer film, was distributed by Universal Pictures. And somewhere along the line, they decided to, well, we'll kind of make him look like Oliver Reed and Curse of the Werewolf and a little bit of, you know, the Wolfman from the 1941 Universal. But on the cover, clearly looks a lot more like the Wolfman from the Curse of the Werewolf. But anyway, here is the Wolfman, and again, there are things about it I love. I'm not totally disappointed with the work that I did. Again, this is an older kit, no date on it. Oops. Oh, again, lost my cape. Ooh, stay away from me, I'm in the shower. Anyway, I digress. Yes, this is the Wolfman. I need to replace one little tail. Is the rat tail got a little... Maybe the Wolfman gnawed it off. Probably broke off in storage. But I've also thought about, if anybody knows, you know, I know you can always replace the old kits, but I'm wondering if there's some type of mold or putty that you can use to resculpt them. Let me know if you guys have an idea. You know, just put it down there on the comments. Anyway, this is the Wolfman. Here's the other strange thing about it. He's got this Beverly Hillbillies rope thing going on. He never had a rope in his belt. Ever. He was barefoot. The Wolfman had a very unique tippy-toe kind of wolf. The first transition in the Wolfman, 1941, was his feet. That's what we first transformed. And when he turned into the wolf, they got up on tippy toes. Because a wolf, you know, runs mostly on his toes. So yes, I'm not really sure what's going on. I went black with the pants because he actually wore like black construction pants or like a dress pants, sort of, I guess, in the original Wolfman. And then he had a black shirt. And of course they just went, oh, no shirt at all. He's Arnold Schwarzenegger. He'll be back. He's all muscled up. He's all buff. He's been working out at the Wolfman gym. I don't know why they did that. He was never without a shirt. But the face is Lon Chaney. You can see Lon Chaney in there. And again, I will do a close-up of this. As I'm talking now, we'll see the close-up, it'll be in color. But yeah, this is the Wolfman, and again, I do like the work of this kit. It's very simple. Again, the focus is on the Wolfman. Mike Hill, who is a sculptor down in Monsterpalooza, made life-size replicas of these, and I have captured some film of them somewhere, but I can't find it. I don't know what happened to it, but he did an awesome job recreating these life-size Aurora models. So there is the Wolfman 1941. Cool. Oh, here we go. Bela Lugosi as Dracula. I'm Dracula. I'm Dracula. Welcome to my home. I never drink. Why? So this is my Bela Lugosi Dracula. Now, I made a fatal flaw with this Lugosi Dracula. Always been confused about what's going on with this man's cape. I've asked people about it, no one knows. Even when I watch him, initially he has several costumes in Dracula, the original. This is the 31 version. The cover, as I said before though, was taken from Abbott and Costello Meets Dracula, with the castle in the background and the bat in the window and his cape. It's a very beautiful rendition that James Palmer did, but it's clearly from Abbott Costello Meets Dracula. And of course, as I said before, it upset people. They said the kit must look like the model, must look like the cover. So they changed it after, I think, this one. But what I did here, and I do have a reissue that I might rebuild, but I took off the fronts and I took the red lining out, even though it would have been white lining. But I want to go back to the red lining, and I want to put the folds over. So my guess is, when I remember seeing this movie, and help me out on this one, when he's coming down the stairs when he first meets Renfield, he has the cape that looks similar to this, and he's wearing the medallion, which he wears through most of the film, and then there's a transition in his costume where he does no longer wear the medallion. He's still in the tux, but he has the longer cape, like this cape, right? And in this part, I thought, is he just draping his cape over? Like this? Is that what he's doing here? Because when you watch the film, it's like you can't quite tell what's going on with his cape when he's on the stairwell. But it's clearly, this is what they were modeling after, is that beginning, that opening shot when you first see Lugosi come down the stairs. But I've always been confused about the cape, so I thought, I'm just going to take the cape off, the front folds off, and not paint them red, just keep them black. Even though the lining was red, I thought, well, maybe, I don't know what I was thinking. It's not as bad as the Gold Hunchback, but it's close. It's just a bad idea. So I have regrets about doing that kind of work with this Lugosi Dracula. But I am going to, like I said, I'm going to build the reissue of this one, and I probably will end up painting the inside lining. And you know, I really do wish I could find those folds, because I would like to glue them back on. So that was my mistake. But it's always been confusing to me about what exactly went on with his cape for this Dracula. I would have loved to have seen him just do his long cape with it blowing in the wind, you know. They are so good at capturing the movement of the capes and stuff, which is why I don't like cloth on the Sideshow collectibles. I like the actual, you know, excuse me. Pardon me. Please keep the cape. Don't start putting fancy Liberace clothing on them and stuff. Just keep it, come on. Please keep it real. But anyway, I do love this model. There's a few things that are missing. I believe a spider goes right here, where there's a little hole for him. And like I said, I need to clean him and repaint him here and there. But I do like the painting work on him, other than the cape. I like the bats. I like the tree. It's in all good shape. And I think this is probably one that was purchased in the 70s, not the original one. I think I did have the original one. Well, I know I did. I got it for Christmas. I remember as a little man in my old home in Transylvania, Aberdeen, Transylvania. I remember getting it, and it was the best Christmas of my life. I couldn't be happier. I got Flintstone Builders and Dracula. What else does one need? for our third and final today. Ooh, it's the creature from the Black Lagoon. Look at his head, he's got a lot of... Look at that dust! Holy moly! This one's more dusty than the rest of them. It's super dusty. I think this was one that came out in either the late 70s or early 80s. I'm not even sure if they came out in the 80s, so it might be a 70s one. I don't think it's original. The creature, though, was the first Aurora kit I ever got, was the creature from the Black Lagoon. I like the work I did on it. I think I will repaint it a little bit and do a little more variance in color and stuff on the base. But I remember I was a little Igorro, and I had my mom's friend's son painted it for me, and my father built it, helped me build it. But the guy put blood coming out of his mouth. It was all the way down here, came all the way down his body. The whole thing was drenched in blood. Because that's what you did when you were a kid, right? He was about, I don't know, he was probably 12, 13. He's like, here, I'll tell you what to do. And he just made it look like blood was, he looked like the Shining twins with the axes in the hallway. He just had blood all over him. And I thought, even as a kid, I thought, I don't remember the creature ever looking quite that bloody. And keep in mind, when I was a little tyke, I hadn't even seen the Creature movie yet. It wasn't available. I think they eventually showed it on Nightmare Theater, my horror show when I was a little tyke in the Pacific Northwest, the Cairo Count. But anyway, it didn't happen till later. I'm sure I wasn't into my teens until I actually saw the Creature from the Black Lagoon. I only saw stills from Famous Monsters magazine. The Creature from the Black Lagoon is a classic, and it's such a great movie. He is clearly kind of the last of the Universal monsters. I've met Rico Browning. He's a wonderful man. He was able to hold his breath for minutes on end. He was a heavy smoker too, which is weird. But he was a little guy. He was not extremely tall. So when you see him underwater, it's Rico Browning. With no eyes, because he needed to see something. They tried wearing goggles and stuff, didn't work. So he had to go down there, but they had to pop the eyes out of the mask. And then Ben Chapman played the creature on land. So he would, and he was a tall guy, he was like 6'4", 6'5". They originally asked Glenn Strange to play the creature, but he was a horrible swimmer, and he said, no, I'll pass. Not realizing, and maybe they didn't either, at the time, that Ben Chapman would never be underwater. It would always be Rico Browning. So when you see Rico underwater, the creature, that's Rico Browning. And even when Julie Adams is swimming across the water and he's chasing her, that woman's a different woman underwater as well. But it was down in Florida. So every time they go underwater, Richard Denning, Richard Carlson, Julie Adams, all different actors underwater. They're more trained professional swimmers that are under there. And Rico is one of them. And I asked Rico, I said, how did you do it? How did you hold your breath? And he said, well, he was just used to doing it. So he swam underwater. And to give them scale, as just a swimmer, they like, we need to get some scale to see what this body would look like down there. And they liked the way he swam. So they said, hey, buddy, do you want to be the creature from the Black Lagoon? And he said, okay. So that's how he got the job. And he said that he wore the mask and they put it on him. And they had to take the eyes out, and then he would swim over to an oxygen tank. He would push a tube through the mask, hold it, and then start swimming. I would be so claustrophobic. I could not do that. And he had to press the mask to get all the air bubbles out of the mask. And if you notice in Revenge of the Creature, when the creature walks among us, they didn't care so much about that. So you see bubbles coming out of the top of the mask and everywhere. But in the original Creature, you don't see any of that at all. So that is some of the cool stuff about the creature from the Black Lagoon. Next week, I will start working on my new episode, which I am so excited about. A new hosted full feature movie. So keep your eyes open and your mouth closed and your nose just open enough so you can breathe, because I don't want you dying when you're watching my movie. Because that would spoil the fun. I'll see you soon. Aurora. Ghoul. Hey dudes, it's Cool Dude Ghoul here, and I'm thrilled to be on my tinkly toes to be doing another Horrah of Aurora. Tickled beyond belief, and old Igorro, you know, he slooshed on the old Cluedo. Hello, and he said, would you like to do another show? And I said, just tell me where to go. And I know where to go, right here in Igorro's Castle Keep. So we're gonna start right away with more Aurora Horror. Let's take a peek, see and see what we've got. Yeah, da 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 the Phantom, the Phantom of the Opera, the Phantom, the Phantom of the Opera. When Igorro was little, that's the song that he sang. It was his own original musical, even before the musical came out of the Phantom of the Opera, which I've seen. The da 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 da. I give it on a scale from 1 to 10. I give it a. I don't want singing monsters, but okay, I get it. It's the Phantom. But this anyway is a nice rendition of the original Aurora Phantom of the Opera kit. Now the thing that's really cool about the Phantom is, again, they went back to the Universal Lon Chaney, but also they put a little niche witchy touch to it. Why? It's dusty but beautiful. Anyway, the one thing they did about this Phantom is they combined it with the Lon Chaney Sr. version and Man of a Thousand Faces with James Cagney, who played Lon Chaney Sr. Very interesting film on Lon Chaney Sr. So if you notice when you look at the cover, even more so than the actual model, it does have a look of the James Cagney Phantom 2, and he's green. He was painted green on the front in some of the covers. I don't know if he was always green, but I remember it being green, and a part of me kind of wants to ka-choo, ha! Part of me wants me to paint him a little bit green, you know? It's kind of cool. It's like the Frankenstein monster, you know? And we'll talk about that later. But that greenish look on the cover was, again, really cool. And they kind of did an intermedium. From the cover of the box, they had this little guy back here screaming, which never seen in the film. He didn't like torture people. This guy's got bones showing through his arms. He's in bad shape. Looks like he's been attacked by crazy dogs or something. I don't know. But they put this up in a cell door, and this part was up here in the painting, right? And there's redo kits where they stick exactly to the cover of the box. Yeah, this is 1963. This is the 1963 Aurora Phantom of the Opera, the original one. It's beautiful. Now, if you notice, there is one bushlaka here, which is this mask. I lost the mask, right? I lost it. So, I used a Bela Lugosi Dracula head, and I sawed off part of it, right? And made a mask out of it. So it's clearly Lugosi's face there, but I lost the original mask, and I suppose I could find it somewhere and order it for like $1,000 billion, but I'm not doing that. I'm just gonna leave it like this, unless somebody wants to donate one to me. That'd be awesome. Or if there's a place I can get one for cheap, I'm sure there's some Aurora bits and pieces area where you can go and get it. But anyway, that's how he is. That is the Phantom of the Opera. And it basically does look a lot like Lon Chaney Sr., who, back when he made that silent version, when they unveiled his face, the audience, some of them fainted. It was so shocking back in the 20s, you know, in the silent film. Nobody had seen anything so horrifying. He totally went for the skull look, right? We know how he got that look. He took hooks and he pinned his nose back and connected them to the wig. And then he took these little eyelet kind of ring things to put around his eyes to bug his eyes out, which is crazy dangerous because those things got popped, cut his, eye. You don't want that happening. But again, he was, suffering for his art. He was just he did some very painful things in his makeups. He also strapped himself down with a hunchback, which the latex hump on his back was 70 pounds. He was running around that thing. It must have been painful. And in the film The Penalty, he actually bent his legs back and strapped them so it looked like he had no legs. And ow, that's gonna be not comfy. What if you cramped up? You got a muscle cramp? You're like, I got leather straps, I can't even get at it. So the man was a, glutton for punishment, but boy was his work great. So again, that is the Phantom. Now in the original novel, The Phantom of the Opera, he was born deformed, right? In this movie, the original Phantom of the Opera, Silent Lon Chaney Sr. film, they never really talk about why it looks so hideous, but he was apparently supposed to be born that way. But in the later films, Herbert Lom's, Hammer version, and even the Claude Rains version, he gets acid thrown in his face. In the 43 version, Claude Rains version, which they obviously didn't do here. That was Universal's first color monster movie, but it was really more of a melodrama. It really, I love Claude Rains, but the movie itself, it doesn't have the gothic appeal that we think of when we think of the Phantom. Whereas the Hammer film with Herbert Lom, that one really had a gothic appeal. It didn't do well at the box office, but it's a good film, and Herbert Lom is awesome as the Phantom. And he, again, his face got burned because this snarny guy stole all of his music. So he went in to destroy the plates and the printing press, and he threw all the prints of his music because this guy put his name on it. And he got burned while he was throwing those things away in the furnace and got horribly burned. And that's how he got scarred up in that version. And then there have been later versions. There even is a virgin. There's no virgins. There might be. But yeah, they did with Robert Englund, who's Freddy from Nightmare on Elm Street. He did a version, a really graphic version, and a couple other guys that did versions, and one based on the musical, and blah, 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 blah. Who cares? There are three in my world. There is the original 1920, I believe 25 is when the Phantom came out. Then there's the 43 version with Claude Rains, which again is the weakest version, I think, of the three. And then the Hammer version, which came out in the 60s. And that's my favorite version. But my favorite look is definitely this one. So there we are, there it is. And that's the Phantom of the Opera. Cool, baby, cool. Oh, yeah, oh man. This is awesome. This is in dire need of repair. I just noticed this thing broke off. This is the Mad Doctor. Look at that, baby. Ooh. Look at him. He's pretty cool, ain't he? Now here's the surprise about the Mad Doctor. This kit was made by Igorro by himself. He made it himself. He took other parts and Frankenstein this kit together. There was no Mad Doctor, as we know in Aurora. So if you notice, again, Igorro must have had a lot of Dracula heads, because here's another Dracula head. I believe when he was little, he got the glow kits, and the glow kits always had optional heads, right? So he put on a Dracula head here, and this is Dracula hands right here. This jacket, though, is from Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, right? And the pants are Dracula, but he took the lab jacket and he cut off part of the jacket so it was a little shorter, so he could get this leg in here. This is, again, the Dracula legs, right? With the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde lab coat, and Dracula arms and head and hands. So it's mostly Frankenstein from Count Dracula. And then these pieces in the back, this is the table from Jekyll and Hyde. And the skull, I think, is from Jekyll and Hyde. I don't even... No, I don't think it is. Maybe it's from the Wolfman? I don't know. And then these chemical boxes are variants ones. This one's an actual glass, which is broken on the side there. And then he's got some extra pieces. And then the electrical equipment in the back here of the lab, that's Legos. Completely cheated on that one. And then these are just needles, pins, just stuck right in there, just ka-ching for the old Jacob's ladder. Electricity not included. And then the back here, this is what they used, when they wrote kits to break off the pieces of your models to put them together. So he kind of made that look like one of those lab type devices, and things need to be glued back on, right? This needs to be put back in place. And there's some pieces here I've noticed that have fallen off. And then the base is from the Forgotten Prisoner. That's the background that he's chained to the castle or the prison wall. So it all kind of works, doesn't it? And I'd like to repaint it. He's a little crude, but it was difficult, I think, for Igorro, because he had to put this hair on there. And this is real, not real hair, but dimension. It's real fuzzy. It's real fuzz, which is not an Aurora, feature at all in their kits. But yeah, mad scientist. Why not? So yeah, this is the only one of its kind. This is a rarity. And it was, but the Mad Doctor was such an essential part of the Universal Monsters. It's funny that they didn't get to that. It seems like they might have done a Mad Doctor. They certainly did a Dawn Post Mad Doctor. But they didn't. So this is where it is. But I think they're basing like the Dawn Post Doctor looked like Dr. Neiman kind of. He kind of looked like Karloff as the Mad Doctor. Like I said before, they never really had a Mad Doctor. They've done things since. But anyway, this is that. This is the one-of-a-kind Mad Doctor. Cool, dude. Okay. Yeah. There you go. This one is the first universe. Sorry. Oh my God. Wowza. I inhaled some dust. Don't inhale dust. It doesn't help you. It makes your eyes water. Here we go with the Frankenstein monster, baby. This is the first one. This is the first model that Aurora built. And Aurora made Frankenstein thinking, well, let's make this model and kind of see how it goes. Well, it went really well. It sold out immediately. They made this Aurora Frankenstein and people went crazy. It just went nuts. These kids in the 60s and 70s were infatuated with monsters. They were great. Because that's all you had. There were no video games, there were no iPhones, none of that. Boop! None of that stuff, man. This was your stuff. So anyway, this one, again, James Bauman did the cover. I think he took it from a publicity still from House of Frankenstein. So he actually painted the cover based more on Glenn Strange. And I think originally, even in the painting, and I'm not sure, but that original Universal Frankenstein where he had the clamps on his forehead and his skin was pinched, there was no scar. I think the painting even had that element going on. But I could be wrong. But anyway, and again, he looked kind of greenish yellow on the cover. And again, it looked a little different. He wasn't in the cover, he wasn't like this. He was like this, sort of, in the painting of the cover. But this actually really does look like Karloff. And it's not Frankenstein, it's Bride of Frankenstein. This is the scene where, in the first film, he burns up in the windmill and then they think he's dead, but it turns out he had fallen into kind of a well underneath where the it burned down, and then he fell in and he was in water, right? And he gets out, and this old woman thinks she's helping her husband out of the well because he wants to make sure that the creature's dead, and she's like, oh gosh, and she helps him up, and then she looks and he throws her in the well. It's pretty cool. He had an attitude by then, you know what I'm saying? He wasn't so cool then. He was like, I'm a little upset about you guys trying to burn me up. Chasing me with those torches. You're giving me attitude, and I'm not digging that. Right? So he comes out, and then he goes storming through the graveyard, and he's knocking trees over, and it's pretty cool. But that's where this is happening from. So it's great they put Frankenstein on the back of the tombstone. And again, the base is real, no pun intended, real basic, right? It's basic base. But the detail on him is definitely from the Bride of Frankenstein, because he's got the ripped up clothing. His hair has been burnt down to his, basically down to his scalp. Because in the original first version, he has bangs, and stuff. He doesn't have any of that happening because it all burned off. And it's totally from the Bride of Frankenstein, 1935. And again, I kind of am thinking of repainting him and making him green, little green tinge, because that was the big thing in the 60s when they first came out with the Frankenstein monster rubber mask. It was green. They said, let's add something to it. When we watch the monster on TV, black and white, of course, so he's always just pale like this. When they made masks, they were like, let's make him green. And so it kind of stuck, right? So all of a sudden you saw the monster a lot, he became green, and it kind of works for me, I don't mind, that's kind of cool. So yeah, I'm gonna make him a little bit green. Some people would say, no, that's not accurate, and that's cool. I see what you're saying, but I think that would be fun to make him a little green. What people don't know or might know is that Stan Lee, when he created the Incredible Hulk is based on the Frankenstein monster and Jekyll and Hyde, right? The Jekyll and Hyde is the gamma ray part where he changes physically. And then if you notice, the Hulk does kind of have a flat head, and he's green, and he does look a little bit like the Frankenstein monster. And Stan Lee's like, absolutely, I stole that idea. I took Frankenstein. And Stan Lee, he's looking in the 60s too, so all the pop culture, the Frankenstein monster, he was pretty much green, right? Even the Glenn Strange paintings of him and stuff. I mean, Glenn Strange images was so famous in the 60s that actually when Karloff died, in his obituary, the picture of him as the Frankenstein monster was actually Glenn Strange. It wasn't even him, man. They didn't even take the time to go, ooh, that's the wrong monster. Bad. Tomato, close enough. But anyway, yeah. So, cool. And paint him green, doing it. And that is the Frankenstein monster. So that's it for today, folks. So keep it cool, dude. And I'll see you soon. Ciao. Hello, it's me, Igorro, and welcome to another Igorro short. This is the final Horror of Aurora. There's only a few left, so let's get to it, huh? Ooh! Ha ha ha! Oh yeah, baby. This is a beauty. This is King Kong, 1933. The original stop motion Kong. This is exactly what this is from. It's a beautiful kit. Fay Ray, Scott Raymond in his hand. The scale is perfect. The original Kong was only 50 feet high, approximately. So later on, when he fought Godzilla, who was more like, a lot higher, a lot bigger, they had to kind of scale Kong up and Godzilla scale down. I mean, think about it. When you watch King Kong, you see him climbing up buildings, right? In Godzilla, you see him smashing buildings. He doesn't climb on him, he just kicks him over. Like so much, you know, like a kickball, like a big box that just blah. Whereas Kong's climbing on him, so when they put them together, they had to figure it out. Anyway, this kit is very nice. I like some of the work I did on it. I'm not exactly pleased with what I did with the base. I'm gonna have to come back and put a little more green, a little more color in the base here. And even the tree, I put it upside down. I probably thought that was a cool idea, but not really. So I'm probably gonna come back at some point. Well, yeah, they're dusty again. I'm working on them, I really am, but I haven't cleaned these ones yet. So yes, this is King Kong. So a little bit more about Kong. There are a lot of different versions of Kong. There's the 1933 King Kong, which is the granddaddy of all. And most King Kong fans, the original 1933 Kong is their favorite, Willis O'Brien. They created the plate process where they had matte paintings placed on sheets of glass. They had one here, and then they had Kong in the middle, and they had one in the background. So it gave it a lot of dimension. Disney later used the same process, right? So stop motion, I've heard that it took about 5 years to do the entire film. I'm not necessarily sure if that's exactly true, but I wouldn't doubt it because stop motion is a very slow process. Willis O'Brien did The Lost World, a silent film before Kong, and it really, it really scared people. They're like, how are these dinosaurs? Who had a camera back in dinosaur times? So they were that convincing to them. And Kong had, the original Kong, he had a hand. They had a big motorized hand to grab Fay Ray, and they had a big close-up of his face, a big head that you see, and he's like, so that's how they basically brought Kong to life. He was originally about 8 inches tall, covered in rabbit fur, and again, Willis O'Brien had an armature underneath, a jointed armature. He'd move a bit more, film it, move a bit more, film it, move a bit more, film it, so you get that whole kind of jerky animated look, which I love. So that was the first Kong. Now, they didn't remake Kong for years. There was talk that they were going to make Frankenstein instead of King Kong in 1933, and Willis O'Brien was going to animate this big kind of Frankenstein monster, but it ended up being Kong, and a better choice by far. Because Karloff did something 2 years earlier that they couldn't even come close to, so this was a better choice. It's probably why they decided to go with Kong instead of the monster from Frankenstein. So the next one that really comes to mind is the 1976 version. Dino De Laurentiis was the producer and director, and he wanted, Italian guy, he wanted to build a huge Kong robot, big animated one, big mechanical Kong, 60 feet high. So they built it, and of course it was a disaster. And if you watch the film, they only use it in like 3 seconds total, and then they use its body in the end when it's dead, laying on the New York ground after falling off the two towers. He actually hopped from one tower to the other, and then fell off the tower. The killing of Kong on that one was not done by planes. He was shot by helicopters, and it's pretty brutal. It was kind of weird because if the helicopters literally is doing little bullets, they should have been little teeny, but they were big ones. Anyway, I digress. So yeah, he fell off of that. So the only time you see the big animated one is when, for a split second, when he breaks out of the cage, they show him dropping part of his cage for a split second, and even that looks like Macy Day Parade phony, right? And then when he's dead, he looks great because he's not moving. The extras that came in to crowd around him when he died, they all grabbed a piece of the hair off of the big giant robot to keep for a sample. So they were restricted with how much they could shoot him because they pulled all the hair off him on one side of him. I get it. Ooh, I want some of that for my, hang in my car window. Anyway, Rick Baker ended up doing all the work. And Rick Baker wore several different foam latex pieces. He played the ape. And then another man who I've met also through a friend of mine, his name is Bill Shepard, and he was a college professor at a college. Well, that would make sense, wouldn't it? But he did all the stunts So Rick Baker played Kong with all these facial expressions. They had several different facial makeups that had different wires they would pull. They had an angry one, so when Kong was angry, they'd pull the cables inside and he would do the frown, and then the adored one when he's like in Jessica Lange, giving her a blow dry. I had the word dry there, to dry her off after it dips her in the water. They again had two big fake hands for her. If you watch the film though, there is some really mistakes in it they could have avoided. They did some really bad blue screen where you're like, oh, I can see all the blue fuzz around it. That's why they later changed it to green screen. And anyway, when he has her in his hand and he dips her in the water, the hand kind of, it's like, looks like a floating raft. It just kind of poofs in. It doesn't really have the density that a real gorilla hand would. You can tell it's kind of a fake hand. But, you know, they did a good job, more or less. And Rick Baker was excellent, I thought, as Kong. He saved the film. And Bill Shepard, the stunt guy, he did a great job too. Bill Shepard also said that to give him more flexibility in his chest, they actually filled up protective devices that men wear so women don't have babies. They I don't know how else to say it without saying it. But anyway, they had those lined up, filled with fluid, put into the chest of the Kong to give him more fluency. So that's a little weird hit that most people don't talk about. It's a little weird. So you've got that Kong, and then they had a couple of remakes, and there's been some really bad parodies. And then the next King Kong that comes to mind is Andy Serkis with the CGI, the stop motion capture, that is, where they put all the dots. And he studied the silverback gorilla, and I'm talking about Peter Jackson's King Kong, which came out in, I believe, 2005-ish. But the Kong in the 2005 Kong is definitely a silverback, and that's a great film. I found it to be really well done, but a little too long for me, honestly. It was kind of exhausting watching it. I felt like cut about 40 minutes out of it, and you'll have an excellent film. That's just me. But the death in the 2005 Kong was heart-wrenching. But hands down, I think the best Kong always will be the original 1933 King Kong. This is the last of the Aurora collection. Oh! Look! Godzilla! Run! It is Godzilla. He looks so cool. Look! Over there! It's Godzilla! You're right! It is Godzilla! Run! It does look so cool. I like this Godzilla model. I love the James Bama cover. I'm assuming at this point James Bama still did the covers with the thunder and the lightning and stuff. So I took this Godzilla and I kind of gave him a grayish tone. I could have done him green. I thought about it. I still might come back and repaint him, put a little more variety in the coloring of the buildings and do a little more detail. But generally this is the Godzilla, and again, it's a pretty darn cool looking model. It looks mostly like, I believe, the Godzilla from the King Kong versus Godzilla, actually. I think this is the one. He changes a lot. He has a lot of different looks. Sometimes his nose is a little more blocky. Sometimes it's more like this, more snout-like. In the newer Godzillas, it goes back to looking more like this Godzilla. But there have been so many Godzilla films. I mean, so many. Japan just never gave up. I saw the first guy that played Godzilla, whose name I couldn't even begin to pronounce without offending him. He's passed now, but he said he got the job. It was very funny because when he was at this convention, he talked about playing Godzilla and they had a translator. And so he would be like, and then the translator was a very effeminate guy. And so he'd be like, which is not offensive. I mean, nothing wrong with that. But it was just kind of funny having a guy go like, well, when I first played Godzilla, he just like, it was just kind of funny. Okay. I don't want to offend anybody. So, when they decided to make Godzilla, they really didn't know how to make him. They thought about stop motion, but they decided no. And so they had to make a suit, but they thought, who are we going to get to wear that suit? And they said, hey, how about that one guy that we set on fire and he jumped in the water? And they thought, yeah, let's get him. And he said, sure, I'll do it. So ironically, when he was playing Godzilla, he was in a scene where he was in the water. And what had happened is some of the big studio lights, because this was in 1956. That's when the first Godzilla came out, black and white. 1956, so the technology was old school. They had just figured out how to build Godzilla. They built the first Godzilla suit. It was too heavy. He couldn't move in it. It was so stiff and rigid. And then the second one, I think, again, he couldn't move and he fell over and he couldn't get up. And they're like, okay. So they finally figured out a suit. They got him in it. And he's in the suit. He's in the water. There's some fire in the water. And suddenly the lights burn out. One of them burned out. One of them came loose. And electrical, big giant light unit fell into the water. Everybody hopped out just before it fell in, except this guy in the gorilla or the Godzilla suit. He couldn't get out. He was stuck in there. And you know what? He would have died, but the Godzilla suit was made out of rubber, so it insulated him and saved his life. Did he go back and do it again? Yes, because he's crazy. But anyway, thank God for him because he was really good. He really did Godzilla justice. So yeah, I would repaint some of this model. Again, all the different Godzilla sequels, and there's just so many of them I couldn't even begin. I know that they did an American version with Godzilla. Matthew Broderick was in it though, and Godzilla looked more like a lizard. It was all CGI, and in my opinion, it was horrible. And now we've come tenfold, and now we have new Godzillas coming out, and Godzilla, there's Kong Skull Island, and the latest one, King Kong versus Godzilla, and you know, they've come a long way. But I gotta say, there's just a little something missing for me. They just don't have any heart. The CGI, it's just all CGI. It's almost like watching a cartoon in my mind. It's really well done, but I feel like I'm kind of watching a cartoon. I think younger generations dig it, and that's fine. But you know, I actually kind of like the old, I think it's 1964 King Kong versus Godzilla. I love that movie. It's goofy, but I love it. I love the Godzilla Kong. I love Godzilla, Japanese Godzilla, which, come on, that's the only way to do it. You gotta have the Japanese in there. They are great with miniature work. I love the buildings they build and just all the imagination. If you go online, you can see them all working on bringing Godzilla to life. It's all, when you just watch the explosions and stuff, everything happens really fast, but you know, they slow the camera down so they get that fluid, slow, you know, mass working, because there are several things that are hard to shrink down. Water and fire are two masses that are very difficult to miniaturize. So CGI has that advantage because it's all computerized. But in the old days, you had to make that fire look scale, right? If you watch really old scale movies, the fire is like, oh, that's cool, but that fire looks, the scale gives it away. The flames are too big. You have to have that scale. And the Japanese, they kind of figured it out. You know, they figured out you got to make miniatures big so the fires and explosions still look in scale, right? And the guys that did the Thunderbird miniatures, who also did the Bond films later on, they figured out something about miniatures as well. They figured out that they did this airport, and they had an airplane on it, and they said, it doesn't quite look right. And then they realized, you know why? It's because there's no skid marks, there's no wear and tear on the landing of where the planes would be. Planes have skid marks and rust and dents and detail that make the scale look big. So they started dirtying up the landings and put little stains on the plane where, you know, water stains would happen and stuff. And all of a sudden the scale looked right. So there are ways to make scale work. but I love scale. I love practical. I'm a big practical fan. Okay, so enough said. So that completes the Aurora. We have the Kong and we have the Godzilla. And those are all of the original Aurora kits. So that's it. And that's our tribute to the Horror of Aurora. Thank you so much for watching. And I'll see you soon.